gossip. Why gossiping is such a bad thing, such a nasty thing, such a negative thing. What are the problems with gossiping? I think that since there's so many young brothers in the masjid tonight, we're going to try to adjust the topic accordingly, but without deviating too much and diverging too much from the suggested topic, the harms of gossiping. Now, many of you are young, walhamd, and one of the biggest and most important steps of maturing and growing up and being a responsible young man or young woman, a successful young man and a successful young woman in the deen, first and foremost, and then, inshallah ta'ala, in the dunya, is maturity. And maturity just doesn't mean that you're older. There are people that are old in age and mature in behavior. And there are people who are young in age but mature in behavior. And one of the greatest hallmarks or milestones or road posts, mile markers of maturity is control, self-control. And one of the most important aspects of self-control is control over the tongue. Knowing how to keep your mouth closed and shut when you need to. Easier said than done. One of the earlier Muslims, he said once that, he says, تَعَلَّمْتُ النُّطْقَ خلال sentences, certain sounds, وَلَكِنِّي لَمْ أَتَعَلَّمَ الصُّمْتَ إِلَّا 40 سَنَةً. But it took me 40 years to learn how to shut up. Not keep silent, not control my mouth, how to shut up. 2 years to learn how to talk, 40 years to learn when not to talk. So maturity and the ratio of maturity is clearly unequal. You learn how to speak quickly. You learn how not to speak, how to control your tongue, how to keep silent, even though you could say something, or you want to say something, or people are forcing and pressuring you to say something, but you what? You keep silent. And that's universal. And learning control of one's tongue will help you and save you in the deen and in the dunya. It's a fact. At the peak of the summit, the greatest, the highest point is being an alim of the deen. A learned man or learned woman in the religion of Islam. You have to learn how to keep silent. Close your mouth and opening your mouth, saying the wrong thing to the wrong person will get your life taken. And that's a fact. So whether you're the highest of the high or the lowest of the low, you need the reminder to do what? Learning how to what? Control your tongue. Learning how to keep your tongue in its jail, in its prison, and you being the sole master and owner of its key. And if you don't learn that, and if you can't control your tongue, you don't know when to shut up, when to be quiet, you don't have the necessary maturity, you don't have the necessary control, let alone fear of Allah, consciousness of Allah. As it states in the hadith, لِمَنْ تَرَكَ الْمِرَاءَ وَإِنْ كَانَ مُحِقًّا, is that there are different levels of paradise, there are different rewards in paradise, and there are some who will receive these different blessings in paradise. لِمَنْ تَرَكَ الْمِرَاءَ وَإِنْ كَانَ مُحِقًّا. It's for those who stop arguing even if they're right. Most of us, we don't know how to stop arguing. We don't know how to khalas, just walk away from the argument, and we're dead wrong. You're dead wrong. Or it's 50-50. You're right, at the same time wrong, I'm right and wrong. But the one who's absolutely right, but for the sake of Allah, I'm going to what? Khalas. You got it. You win. Not too many people have that type of mastery over their tongue. So therefore, gossip is a big problem of the tongue. And gossip is a twin and a partner, a pair, a cousin of backbiting and of slander. And whenever these two things are found in a society and they are prevalent, know for sure that that society will not flourish. And you can't do anything successful whenever you're a gossiper and whenever you're around gossiping people. and whenever you lend your ears to people who gossip. Whether those who gossip say, what's the big deal? Or whether those who gossip in the name of Allah, for the sake of Allah. Those who think that they're getting closer to Allah. Those who think that they're warning from deviation or misguidance. But in actuality, they're nothing but gossiping. And those people who spend their lives, the precious hours out of their lives that they can never ever get back, talking about somebody else, good or bad. So it's a big problem. And most skills that you have as an adult, as a grown man, as a grown woman, those skills, those values, they need to be taught and instilled at your guys' age. Because when you turn 15, 16, 17, 18, it's too late. You're pretty much who you are. You learn things as you get older. You learn how to, practice trial and error, but your character is forged. So control your tongue. You gotta keep silent. You gotta know when not to talk. It's very, very important step of being a successful Muslim, especially a young Muslim, going to college, playing basketball, studying the Quran, trying to get a career, trying to get married, trying to keep a marriage. How many young brothers and sisters get married? How many divorces there are? We know one of the problems and one of the reasons why it's such a bad and horrible divorce rate, one reason or another, is because the man doesn't know when to keep silent, let alone the woman doesn't know when to keep silent. So that's food for thought, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. And inshallah ta'ala, I'm going to share with you guys what Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyya rahimahullah ta'ala says regarding how shaytaan attacks the human being. How shaytaan attacks the servant and how he gets will habitual sinner. And what we meant with regards to never losing hope in Allah's mercy, never stop making dua, never avoid tawbah and istighfar because you're a sinner, whereas Allah, the Sublime and the Exalted, He answered the dua of Iblis. And as Sufyan ibn Uyayna or Sufyan al-Thawri said, وَهُوَ شَرُّ خَلْقِ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى, the worst of Allah's created beings is shaytaan and is Iblis. Yet and still, Allah, the Sublime and the Exalted, He answered his dua. The scholars of Islam, they have two main views with regards to those ayat in chapter 7, Surah Al-A'raf. قَالَ أَنظِرْنِي. He said, Oh Allah, allow me to live long enough in which لَأُغْوِيَنَّهُمْ أَجْمَعِينَ, I can mislead all of your servants, except for those who are chosen and selected. So many scholars, they say, is that هَذَا كَانَ عَلَى سَبِيلِ الدُّعَاءِ وَالطَّلَبِ مِنْ إِبْلِيسِ, is that Iblis was begging and asking Allah. And obviously, قَدْ أَجَابَهُ تَعَالَى, Allah answered him. And others, they say, بَلْ, Iblis's question and his request, وَافَقَ مَا قَدَّرَهُ اللَّهُ وَقَضَاهُ وَهُوَ الْإِنذَارُ, is that it was a coincidence. Iblis asked for something, and Allah, the Sublime and the Exalted, had already decreed and mandated and willed for Iblis to be from the munzarin. And لا شك الصواب القول الأول وهو ظاهر النص وليس هناك ما يدل على منعه بل هناك ما يدل على خلاف أن الله عز وجل قد يستجيب دعاء الكافر, is that Allah, the Mighty and the Most High, He can answer the supplication of a non-Muslim. أَمَّنْ يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَالْمُضْطَرُّ قد يكون مسلما وقد يكون كافرا وقد يكون منافقا وقد يكون فاسقا, etc. Let alone واتق دعوة المظلوم فإنه ليس بينها أو فإنه ليس بينها وبين الله حجاب وفي رواية وإن كان من الكافر. Even if it's a non-Muslim that you've oppressed, beware of them making dua against you. اتقوا اللعانين اتقوا الملاعن الثلاث. هناك نصوص كثيرة, عموم وإطلاق, general and unrestricted text stating that Allah can and will and has answered the dua of non-Muslims. So therefore, there's nothing that prevents us from believing that Iblis made dua to Allah, asked Allah to keep him alive, to let him go, not to punish him, not to force him to stop, to mislead all of Allah's slaves. And Allah says, go, you have your wish granted. And what did Iblis say? He told Allah and he swore to Allah And he promised Allah, لَأَقْعُدَنَّ لَهُمْ. He says, I will sit and I will wait in ambush, and I will take them away from your straight path. Then he said, I will come to them what? مِن بَيْنِ أَيْدِيهِمْ وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ وَعَنْ أَيْمَانِهِمْ وَعَنْ شَمَائِلِهِمْ. He says, I will attack them from the front. I will attack them from the rear, the van in the rear. I will attack them from the right, and I will attack them from the left. And you won't find most of them shakirin. Most of them will be ingrates. But Allah Azza wa Jal, He did mention the direction that Iblis said, which was min fawqihim. He never said, I will attack them from above, proving that nothing and no one can come between the slave and his Lord, the mighty and the most high. And that's something I want to mention earlier in khutbah, with regards to not losing hope. La tayasu min rawhillah. Don't give up, don't lose hope. No matter what type of sins you've made, inshallah ta'ala, there's a chance for you. All right. So therefore, how does shaitan attack the servant? Or in simple, easy terms, how to mess up your life. What are the ways in which you can mess your life up as a young Muslim man? What are some of the ways that you can mess your life up as a young Muslim woman? What are some of the ways that you can make a mistake, one bad decision, one poor decision that can cause you years of suffering? 9, 10, 11, 12, the young guys I'm talking to now, specifically. You learn wisdom at a young age. You learn the proper decisions at a young age. As one person said, that in high schools, instead of the children being allowed to play basketball and football and baseball and this and that, and then being forced to learn this type of math and this history, etc., etc., he says children in schools, let alone public schools in the inner urban city, a curriculum should be on chess. They should be forced to learn how to play chess. And they should be taught from a young age how to think and ponder, and how to be slow in one's deliberations, swift in one's executions. You think for a while about that one piece you're about to touch. Where you're going to move it? What are the possible options and squares to which I can move it? Is my piece going to remain there? Is it going to be captured? Is it a sacrificial piece? Is it in a defensive position in the middle? Etc., etc., etc. And then once you've made your decision, you move the piece. Versus other sports and other things that are based off of impulse and just feeling it. But that's a different discussion. Al-Muhim, the point that I'm trying to make is that regardless of the older brothers in the masjid tonight and the older sisters, the young guys, the young sisters, the youngsters, I'm talking to you directly, is that you have to learn how to be wise from a young age. And you have to learn how to think thoroughly before you make a move. You must think what? Where's Sheikh Ilyas? He left. You must think first what? Sahulullah. They said this. You have to think first before you move as a young guy. And that's because there are bad decisions that you can make that can haunt you for many years out of your life. So think about whatever you want to do, let alone think about what you're going to what? What you're going to say. And from the things that you can say without thinking about is gossiping, talking about people, passing on information and news. And the Prophet ﷺ, he clearly said this in a hadith in which he's quoted, إِنَّ الْعَبْدَ لَيَتَكَلَّمُ بِالْكَلِمَةِ لَا يُلْقِي لَهَا بَالًا. Is that a servant will make a statement in which he doesn't even care about. And that statement can send him further, the distance further than the east and the west, the fire of hell, waliyadu billah. So from the ways of being unsuccessful in the deen, from the ways of being unsuccessful in the dunya is talking too much and not having control over your tongue. And from talking too much and from not having control over your tongue is gossiping and talking about people and spreading news and passing on information. So be mindful of that. All right, so now let's get back to, and inshallah the younger brothers and sisters, they're still invited in this, but now let's get back to the older brothers and sisters now. Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala, he states, Faslun min madakhil al-ma'asi al-lafadhat. It's about the ways that shaitan attacks the human being. Anybody know? Anybody have a guess? How does shaitan slip through the cracks each and every single time? Fadal. As your own reasoning. That's not what we're looking for. simplifies and amplifies. That's an excellent answer like the previous one, but it's not what we're looking for. We're talking about routes. Which doorways does he come in through? Not techniques. Doubts. Ignorance. La. That's not it. There are 4 doors that Ibn Qayyim mentioned. He says, وأكثر ما تدخل المعاصي على العبد من هذه الأبواب الأربع فنذكر في كل باب منها فصلا يليق به. He says there are 4 ways that the shaytaan attacks the human being and enslaves the servant and makes him a chronic sinner. And we're going to get to the gossiping. He says, ولهذا قيل من حفظ هذه الأربعة أحرز دينه اللحظات والخطرات واللفظات والخطوات. 4 ways, 4 doorways. Number 1, al-lahadat, what you look at, your eyes, like we mentioned on Thursday, what you gaze at, what you gaze upon, what you allow to enter into your mind and your heart through your eyes. Number 2, wal khatarat, and your actual thoughts. Not what you're doing, not what you did, but it's just on your mind. You're thinking about it. You're not controlling your thoughts. You're allowing your mind to drift. You're allowing your mind to be in the wrong place. This is one of the ways that the shaitan always enters. Number 3, wal-lafadat, things that you do with your tongue, stuff that you say, the words that you spit, the words that you utter. And last but not least, he says, wal-khutuwat, and footsteps. Places you go, things you say, things you think about, and things that you look at. It's golden advice for a young man or a young woman. Be mindful of what you look at on TV, on your phone, on the internet. Be mindful of what you think about, what you allow to rest on your brain. Doubts, you allow the doubt to come into your head. You allow the evil act, the evil thought, you premeditated, and the next thing you know, it turns into, I have to do it, I must do it. Let alone what you look at, let alone what you think about, let alone what you talk about, and let alone what you actually do. فَيَنْبَغِي لِلْعَبْدِ أن يكون بواب نفسه على هذه الأبواب الأربعة يلازم الرباط. He says, so therefore these are the borders of which you must remain vigilant. Always be on guard of an invasion and a penetration, a thrust through your territory. The thughur. You got to keep a close eye on what you look at, what you think about, what you talk about, and what you actually khutuwat, the steps that you take. And of course tonight we want to focus on al-lafadat, words that people say, and included in that is gossip. And included in that is the sister of gossip, which is an-namima, or al-ghiba, al-ghiba. Tayyib. Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala, and obviously we don't have time to read everything. I wish I could. And inshallah you can go back to, if you want to reference, it's an excerpt that I translated some years ago from Jami' al-Ulum wal-Hikam of Ibn Rajab. The explanation of the 50 hadith, not 40, but 50. Obviously, Nawawi, he wrote 42 hadiths. Ibn Rajab, he added an 8 hadith supplement, and then he explained those 50 hadiths in his book, which is called Jami' al-Ulum wal-Hikam. And it was the explanation of the hadith of Sufyan ibn Abdullah al-Thaqafi. قُلْ آمَنْتُ بِاللَّهِ ثُمَّ اسْتَقِمْ. Say, I believe in Allah, then be upright. And at the end of that says istiqamatul lisan, your tongue being straight and not crooked. One's tongue. And if you don't control your tongue will control you. As they asked a very famous and infamous leader or dictator, if that's what you want to call him. We won't mention his name. You all know him. Many of you come from, or your parents come from, the continent which he was a dictator. And they asked him, he said, why doesn't your country have freedom of speech? Why do you oppress your political opponents? You torture them, you lock them up, you don't allow journalists to come and to criticize you in a document, etc., etc., etc. He said, that's not true. He said, in my country, yeah, we have freedom of speech. You have freedom before you speak. We can guarantee that. As far as freedom after speech, we don't guarantee that. And that's the difference between my country here and the United States or this country, that country. Freedom before you speak. Freedom after speech, not necessarily. Think how wise this is. Before you speak, you control the situation. I don't know what you're thinking. I don't know what's on your mind. The moment you say it, now you're held responsible. You're a prisoner. You got to back up what you said. No one knows that you're ignorant or you're a fool. No one knows how much knowledge you have or how much knowledge you don't have. The moment you say something, the moment you talk, the moment you blabber it out, everyone knows what? That you really don't know. So silence, control over tongue, being mindful of what you say, what you're going to say, what you're not going to say, that's the name of the game when it comes to being mature and being successful. Ibn al-Qayyim, he says, وَأَمَّا اللَّفَظَاتُ فَحِفْظُهَا بأن لا يخرج لفظة ضائعة بأن لا يتكلم إلا فيما يرجو فيه الربح والفائدة في دينه فإذا أراد أن يتكلم بالكلمة نظر هل فيها ربح وفائدة أم لا فإن لم يكن فيها ربح أمسك عنها وإن كان فيها ربح نظر هل تفوته بها كلمة هي أربح منها فلا يضيعها بهذه. He says, as far as guarding yourself against shaytaan's attacks with regards to your tongue, then it is to stop and to look and to think. Before you speak, what am I going to say? Is it beneficial? Is it helpful or is it harmful? Is it going to make me a better person in my deen or is it going to make me worse? And if it is beneficial, then you measure it a second time. If I say this, will it prevent me of saying something which is even better? Or doing something which is even better? So that's another level of control over your tongue. Number one, don't speak unless it's beneficial. Clear? Don't talk unless it's something which is good. And when you do want to say something good, maybe there's something that you can say which is even what? Better. Everyone understand this? You want to be a businessman? You want to make money, good money? I guarantee, I challenge you to go to any corporation, any organization. The leader of the corporation, the leader of the organization is always the most well-spoken. That's a fact. He may not know the most. He may not be the biggest, the toughest, the strongest, or the smartest, but the leader of the organization is the one who knows how to talk the best. And most leaders and presidents, they don't write their own speeches. They have people write speeches for them. But how they execute it, how they express it, how they articulate it, you think that he wrote the speech himself. And that is by picking and choosing what to say. There's no need to explain all of that. There's no need to apologize and say that for five. There's no need to say that. Say this, say that, and that's it. Khalas. So the point that I'm trying to get to is, many of our Muslim youth, they aspire to be successful in the worldly life. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's fine. They don't have aspirations for the deen of knowledge and ilm. That's okay. Everyone doesn't have to be. What I'm trying to get to is that practicing Islam properly leads to success in the hayat dunya. Everybody understand this or not? When you have the proper Islamic values, you'll be successful in the worldly affairs. That's the point that we're trying to get to. And from that is controlling what? One's tongue. How do you control your tongue? It's to think before you speak. And once you've thought about it, you think of what? A second time. Maybe I can say something even better. Maybe I can summarize it. Maybe. Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, he then says, وَإِذَا أَرَدْتَ أَن تَسْتَدِلَّ عَلَى مَا فِي الْقَلْبِ فَاسْتَدِلَّ عَلَيْهِ بِحَرَكَةِ اللِّسَانِ. And when you want to know what's in someone's heart, then look how they talk. You want to know what a person really thinks and feels on the inside? Just look at their speech. As if you have a doorway into someone's heart. فَإِنَّهُ يُطَلِّعُكَ عَلَى مَا فِي الْقَلْبِ شَاءَ صَاحِبُهُ أَمْ أَبَى. And that's because the tongue is the indicator in the heart. whether the speaker likes is going to give it away. مغارفها فانظر إلى الرجل حين يتكلم فإن لسانه يغترف لك مما في قلبه حلو وحامض وعذب وأجاج وغير ذلك ويبين لك طعم قلبه اغتراف لسانه. He says that Yahya ibn Mu'adh rahimahullah, he stated, the hearts are like pots. The hearts are like pots, cauldrons. You want to make soup or sauce, boil something, rice, pasta, noodles, you have a pot. You boil the water, you cook it, right? That is the similitude of one's heart. And the ladles, the tongues, they give you the flavor of the broth, the flavor of the soup. Is it sweet? Is it bitter? Is it salty? Is it tangy? Is it spicy? Etc., etc. So therefore, you want to know what's inside of the pot? Take a scoop. أي كما تطعم بلسانك طعم ما في القدور من الطعام فتدرك العلم بحقيقته كذلك تطعم ما في قلب الرجل من لسانه فتذوق ما في قلبه من لسانه كما تذوق ما في القدر بلسانك. So therefore, if you hear someone always gossiping, talking about people, spreading stuff about people, know for sure that that person is a weak-minded, weak-hearted, insecure person, a jealous person, an envious person. That person is nasty, and we should have to keep talking about people and slandering people. That person who keeps passing on this one said, that one said, this one said, that one said, they're bored with their own lives. That's not the person that you want to be your friend, let alone the person that you want to follow and be around. That's not the person that you want to take as your companion, someone who's empty, just like soup. Let me taste that. It's okay. I'll get another one. You're not going to eat that. You don't want to eat that. It doesn't taste like it. It doesn't have any flavor. It's too salty. It's too bitter. It's too sweet. That's not for me. So you taste, you sample something, and now you know whether you want that thing or not. So anyone who's a slanderer or backbiter or a gossiper, know for sure that person cannot be my companion on any level or aspect of life. You play basketball, you're an alim, you're a businessman, let alone you're involved in the streets. Because the worst thing is someone who does what? Talks. How do you think they catch people? They catch people because of the weakest link. We'll catch them talking, we'll catch them saying this, we'll catch them texting, we'll catch them. Slow down. Let's talk about this in person, not over the phone. Let's talk about this here in this location, not at that location. You never want somebody like that around you. You live in that type of lifestyle that doesn't know when to be quiet. We all know that. That's a rule of the streets, is you gotta keep your mouth shut. You cannot talk. And if you can't control your tongue, know for sure, you give everybody a free sample of your soup, your kitchen will be shut down, what? Very soon. Ibn al-Qayyim then states, وفي حديث أنس المرفوع لا يستقيم إيمان عبد حتى يستقيم قلبه ولا يستقيم قلبه حتى يستقيم لسانه وسئل النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم عن أكثر ما يدخل الناس النار فقال الفم والفرج قال الترمذي حديث حسن صحيح. Ibn al-Qayyim quotes two hadiths. Both of them have sound meanings. One of them isn't the soundest, but its meaning is sound. And the second one is absolutely sound, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. The first hadith states, a servant's iman will not be straight until his heart is straight. And his heart will not be straight until his tongue is straight. And the second hadith states, the Prophet ﷺ was asked, what is the most frequent reason behind people going to the hellfire? He said, it is the mouth and it is the private part. Things people do with their mouths and things that people do with their private parts. Lying, slandering, gossiping, etc. Let alone zina, homosexuality, so on and so on and so forth. وقد سأل معاذ النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم عن العمل الذي يدخله الجنة ويباعده من النار فأخبره برأسه وعموده وذروة سنامه ثم قال ألا أخبرك بملاك ذلك كله قال بلى يا رسول الله فأخذ بلسان نفسه ثم قال كف عليك هذا فقال وإنا لمؤاخذون بما نتكلم به فقال ثكلتك أمك يا معاذ وهل يكب الناس على وجوههم أو مناخرهم إلا حصائد ألسنتهم. قال الترمذي حديث حسن صحيح. ومن العجب أن الإنسان يهون عليه التحفظ والاحتراز من أكل الحرام والظلم والزنا والسرقة وشرب الخمر ومن النظر المحرم وغير ذلك، ويصعب عليه التحفظ من حركة لسانه، حتى ترى الرجل يشار إليه بالدين والزهد والعبادة وهو يتكلم بالكلمات من سخط الله لا يلقي لها بالا، ينزل بالكلمة الواحدة منها أبعد مما بين المشرق والمغرب. And then he goes on to quote the hadith of Mu'adh ibn Jabal, in which Mu'adh asked him about something which will make him closer to paradise and further from hell. And the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, he complied to that request. He gave him what he asked and more. And then he said, "Oh Mu'adh, let me tell you about the anchor to the ship, the thing that holds everything down and together, the most important piece and aspect, and that is kuffa alayka hada, hold this back." Mu'adh asked the Prophet ﷺ, "O Messenger of Allah, on the day of judgment, will we be punished? Will we be held responsible? Will we be taken into account for all that which we do with our tongues?" The Messenger of Allah ﷺ, he said to Mu'adh, in a state of shock and in a state of amazement, he couldn't believe what he had heard Mu'adh asked. Mu'adh, which the Prophet ﷺ said about وَأَعْلَمُهُمْ بِالْحَلَالِ وَالْحَرَامِ Mu'adh ibn Jabal, the most learned of my Sahaba, the lawful and the unlawful, is Mu'adh. And how could you ask a question like this? He said, "Thakilatka, may your mother be bereft of you." Basically, may you not be here. He says, "Will the people be thrown and pulled and dragged upon their faces, except..." That's the only reason, in other words. And at the head of that is a shirk, as people saying things about Allah with their tongues, as what people say about Allah's rulings and His deen with their tongues, let alone gossiping and backbiting. Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, and it's very strange, you'll find a man who can stay away from stealing, he can stay away from zina, he can stay away from drinking alcohol, he can stay away from all of the bad, evil, ugly sins, but he can't control his tongue. He's a person that people say he's pious, he's righteous, he prays all night, he makes i'tikaf, he's memorized the Quran, but his speech takes him to the fire of hell. He doesn't even realize, let alone he doesn't even care. So I would advise each and every one of you brothers, inshallah ta'ala, to go back to that previously mentioned book, and also Ad-Da'u wad-Dawa, the disease and its cure, or Al-Jawab al-Kafi, the sufficient answer of Ibn al-Qayyim, and read about these four entrances, these four doorways of shaytaan. Why people make so many sins and fall victim to shaytaan is because of these four things. And pay attention to reason number 3, which is the tongue. And if you can master your tongue and control your tongue at a young age, there lies no doubt you're going to go far. Whether you pursue the religion, or whether you pursue the religion and the dunya, or even, for argument's sake, worse come to worse, you just pursue the dunya, you'll still go further than a person who doesn't know how to control his tongue, let alone those who are gossipers and slanderers. So these are some of the harms of a namima. First and foremost is disobedience to Allah. As the Prophet ﷺ said when he passed by the 2 graveyards, and he said, إِنَّهُمَا لَا يُعَذَّبَانِ وَمَا يُعَذَّبَانِ فِي كَبِيرٍ بَلَى. He said, nay. The Prophet, he passed by the 2 graves, and he said, these men, as we speak, Ibn Abbas narrated the hadith, they are being punished. But they aren't being punished for something which is big. They aren't being punished for something which is major. And one version of this hadith says that the Prophet ﷺ, he corrected himself. He says, rather, it was something that was big. أَمَّا أَحَدُهُمَا, as far as one of these punished in the grave, فَكَانَ لَا يَسْتَتِرُ مِنْ بَوْلِهِ. Then when he urinated, he didn't clean himself. He didn't clean his clothes. He didn't protect himself from the splashes of his urine. So he's being punished. And it's very scary in the masjid. Something's off. with our tarbiyah. Our children don't know how to use the bathroom properly. They don't know how to clean themselves properly. If it's on the toilet, then it's on their pants, their clothes. And there's a reason behind them being punished in the grave. And there's also a lesson with regards to sports and with regards to having kuffar as your friends and you being shy and embarrassed to use the bathroom in the proper manner. You being shy and embarrassed of cleaning yourself. You having to use the bathroom somewhere and there's nothing in the way for you to clean yourself off. If you're out drinking and you're drunk, you pull over on the side of the road, are you making istinja? Honestly, what are the chances of that? You're not making istinja. You're hanging out with kuffar. You're not cleaning yourself. Take care of what you need to take care of. But in most cases, people, when you're around people that aren't following the deen, you go over brother's house, the bathroom is, something's off. You go over brother's house, he asks him which way is the qibla. He says, hold on, let me find out for you. That's a serious problem. Never happened to you before? You go over someone's house and he doesn't know where the qibla is. You go into the bathroom, there's no way for you to clean yourself, no water, something's off. And the Prophet ﷺ says that is a reason behind it being punished in the grave. He says as far as the second man is being punished, then he used to go beyond the people, back and forth. He said, she said, this sheikh said, this brother said, this sister said, this player, this one, this politician, this prime minister, this leader. I don't believe it, I'm just saying it. I'm not saying it's true, I'm just telling you what they said. I know it's not true, but I'm telling you, they're making the meme, the gossip. These people will be punished in their graves. And the Messenger of Allah said in another authentic hadith, لا يدخل الجنة قتات. A gossiper will never, ever enter paradise. So there are many harms of namima in this world, in the grave, let alone of the day of judgment. So beware. Be mindful of your tongues. Be mindful of what you say. Control yourselves. And practice makes perfect. We'll stop here. It's late. We'll leave some time for some questions. If the brothers and sisters have any questions, وَجَزَاكُمُ khairan. Are there any questions? If you have a question, it's okay. No question. Father Akhi.
Why did the Prophet ﷺ say that your head may your body be gone?
Clear. Why did he tell Mu'adh, Thakilatka umuka? This was something that the Arabs would say, and they didn't mean it literally. It was something they would say when they were amazed or shocked. They were amazed or shocked, and they would say it, and it wasn't something that they absolutely meant. He wouldn't make dua against Mu'adh to die. It's not what he meant, but he meant like, how could you even ask that question? You got it? That's what's meant by that. And Allah knows best. Now, Mahi, Hamza. Understood. Can a person read the English tafsir of the Quran as they're making Salat al-Tarawih? It's best not to. However, the general rule is that there are things that you are allowed to do in the voluntary prayer, especially the night prayer, that you differ on holding the mushaf. Brothers ask a question with regards to or a device instead of a mushaf. Me personally, I don't feel it's haram to hold the mushaf or to hold a phone or a tablet, as long as it's on airplane mode. As long as you're not looking at something else, you're just looking at the actual mushaf, following behind the imam, whether you're a hafid or not, right? As far as reading the English tafsir in the salah, I wouldn't advise with it. In general, as long as you don't talk, as long as you don't say those words, you're silent and you're looking, maybe. But I wouldn't advise with that. Wallahu ta'ala alam. Nah, Mahi.
What is your advice to someone struggling with discipline in many areas of life?
Someone who's struggling with discipline in many areas of life. Just work on one type of discipline, and that's the spiritual discipline. Fix your relationship with Allah And inshallah ta'ala, everything else will fall into place. Fix the secrets that are between you and Allah will fix that which is public and known. As Al-Hasan al-Basri rahimahullah ta'ala said when he was asked for advice, he says, أصلح الذي أو أصلح ما بينك وبين الله يصلح الله ما بينك وبين الناس. So, bid'nillahi ta'ala, the physical discipline, discipline at work, discipline in the home, discipline when it comes to physical fitness, activity, etc., all of those things fall in order. Bid'nillahi ta'ala. And of course, there are practical steps for that as well. There are practical steps for discipline as well, learning discipline and increasing in discipline. There are. Wallahu alam. Ahmed.
We know there's a punishment if you say something wrong. But if you're like in a setting, is there punishment in Islam for the omission of truth where you see people are doing something wrong maybe?
Clear.
Go further there.
Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala in the very same book, he mentions those who speak the falsehood as being a shaytaan natiq. وَالسَّاكِتُ عَنِ الْبَاطِلِ shaytaan akhras. And the one who keeps silent upon the truth, he's a demon and a devil too. But he can't talk. He's a dumb devil. He's a mute devil. A deaf devil, whatever the case may be. He can't speak. But they're both what? La shak. And one of them in most cases is worse than the other. Wallahu alam. Naam, akhi. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
So, in our community, I know it might be a big issue, but how do you approach parents, especially aunts, uncles, mothers, that when they're on the phone, you know, they got little kids growing up from a young age, they're gossiping. So, I mean, they might not see it as gossip as kids, but, you know, they're talking and this and that, rapid fire, news spreads fast. How do you approach parents with this kind of issue?
Clear. Try to pick the best time. Question is, when you catch your parents gossiping, and that's something that I didn't mention in the class, from the tricks of shaitan, is gossiping is looked at as being a harmless vice. It's looked at as being, adi. It's no big deal. We're just talking. I'm not backbiting nobody. I'm just talking. I'm just, as we call it, chewing the fat. Just, talking. This is what women do. Big deal. This is what brothers do. Big deal. I haven't seen him in a while. He told me what happened, such and such and such. Know for sure, if someone allows you to backbite or allows you to make namima, they'll do it to someone else against you. That's a fact. If you allow them to bring you gossip in a manner of making problems between people, they'll do the same to somebody else with you. So therefore, it is your duty, if someone brings you namima, to stop them. But what about if someone else is making namima and you're a kid or a child or a teenager and you know it's wrong? What do? Well, in general, it is your job to enjoin the good and forbid the evil. And the Prophet ﷺ commands us to help our brothers, whether our brothers are wrongdoers or whether our brothers are being wronged. Unsur akhaka zaliman aw madhluman. Bottom line. So even though that's your mother, that's your parent, that's your father, he raised you, you loved him, وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا, you have to say, oh mother. You can't say that, ummi. Abi, you know that's haram. You taught me that's haram. And if he gets mad and if he gets angry, that's fine. You've done your job as a child. And if he says, be quiet, shut up. What do you know, boy? I raised you. We changed your diaper. How can you tell me that I'm a sinner? So on and so forth. You tell him, this is how you raised me, Abi, not to be afraid. You raised me to speak the truth. You raised me to be a good, proud Muslim. That's why you sent me to Duxi. That's why you paid for my education. And now I'm doing that for your service. So if the parent gets mad, if they get angry, even with you do it with respect, khalas, you've done your job. You've done your job, but you have to do something. You have to say something one way or another. And of course, that's a difficult situation to be in. But the believer, no matter how young or no matter how big and old someone is, you have to have courage. Wallahu a'lam. Naam, akhi.
Where does politics fall under in terms of gossip? Is there a line between both?
Politics and gossip. I would say this is one of the ripest pastures. It's one of the biggest breeding grounds for namima is politics. That's a fact. And one of the problems with politics, especially modern Western politics, is that it's much more than just leadership or voting. It's much more than just democracy. Listen, it's much more than that. But oftentimes people, they can't get to their political goals and aims until they violate the Quran and Sunnah. Until they discard the Quran and Sunnah. Waliyadu billah. So a big part of that is gossiping. And the definition of namima is نقل كلام الغير إلى الغير على وجه الإساءة. It's to take Tom's speech to Bob with the intention of making Tom and Bob hate each other. And this is a big political tool. You heard what he did, you saw what he did, you saw the people voted for him, you hear the promises that he made, do you believe that? He's taking what you deserve, so on and so on and so on and so forth. And that's why you'll find that the man 9 out of 10 times is a two-faced person. Especially when it comes to what? Politics. And know the golden rule of politics. There are no long-term, perpetual friends or enemies. The only thing that's permanent, perpetual, long-term are interests. One day you're my friend, the next day you're my enemy. Only based off of interests. One day you're the worst person, the next day you're the best person. Only based off of interests. So how can you even be in that type of circle, be around those types of people as a Muslim? And the Prophet ﷺ says, تجد الناس أو تجد شر الناس ذا الوجهين الذي يأتي هؤلاء بوجه وهؤلاء بوجه. He said you'll find the vilest of men is the man who has two faces. He goes to this group with a face, and he goes to that party with a face. So therefore, oftentimes it's inseparable. And if a Muslim is involved in politics, and some Muslims have to be involved in politics, and should, not all, but some, it is your duty and job to enjoy the good and forbid the evil to the best of your ability. But know for sure, the more you enjoy the good and the more you forbid the evil, the more enemies that you'll make, but the more respect that you'll gain. And the opposite is the opposite. As Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala stated, من ترك الأمر بالمعروف والنهي عن المنكر مخافة المخلوقين نزعت منه طاعته حتى لو أمر عبده أو ولده لاستخف به. He says whoever stops enjoying the good and stops forbidding the evil out of fear of the people, making enemies, he says, is that the people will lose their respect for him. If he commanded his son to do something, his son will look down upon him. And the opposite is the opposite. Wallahu ta'ala.
We got two questions from the sisters.
Further.
So the first question is, if you could clarify hadith number 240 in Bukhari on Laylatul Qadr, is it really the same night every year? And if you just repeat the question for them.
Can you clarify the hadith in Sahih Bukhari with regards to Laylatul Qadr being every year? Is it the same every year? Scholars, they differ on this. They argue on this. And inshallah ta'ala, perhaps the most correct opinion is that Laylatul Qadr fluctuates. And it does not have to be the same night every single year. We all know that the Messenger of Allah was told what Laylatul Qadr was, and he saw the two men arguing and fighting and raising their voices, and it was taken away from them. So therefore, look for it with even a closer eye during the last 10. Look for it. من كان متحريها فليتحرها. Let them look for it in the odd nights, the 27th, etc., etc. But it doesn't mean that Laylatul Qadr is the same each and every single year. And if that was the case, then the Muslims would only pray, they would only make dua, they would only make itikaf, they would only give sadaqah, they would only have their fundraisers the same night every single year, and they would become desensitized. They would lose the spiritual hunger and the feeling. And that's against the wisdom of Allah Azza wa Jalla, taken away from the Prophet, first and foremost. Wallahu ta'ala alam.
The second question from the sisters is, how do you repent after backbiting?
How do you repent after backbiting? First and foremost, you fulfill the correct Tawbah with its conditions, the well-known conditions of Tawbah. And many scholars say you must apologize to the one that you slandered. You have to suck it up. You have to be a man, a woman. Go to them, to their face and say, I'm sorry, I was backbiting you. It may be a hard pill to swallow, maybe bitter medicine, but you have to do that. And other scholars, they say, if that's going to cause more problems, more hatred, more beef, then don't go to them directly, but speak highly of them in the same places, around the same people that used to speak ill of them. Wallahu a'lam. Naam. Assalamu alaikum wa barakatuh. Wa iyyakum.
Can you expand on the statement of the hadith that the gossiper does not enter Jannah, in light of the hadith that whoever has an Adam way of iman in them will enter Jannah? How would you amend these two?
Understood. Excellent question. The hadith that states that the gossiper shall not enter paradise, how does that fall in harmony with the hadith, rather the hadiths that talk about all of the believers going to paradise? Even the weakest and the lowest of believers. And the amount of faith that they have in their hearts is that of an atom or mustard grain, etc. Right. There's no clash between those hadiths. First and foremost is, many scholars of the early generations, they wouldn't make any interpretation of those hadiths. Those who cheat us aren't from us. Those who bear weapons against us aren't from us. Those who attribute themselves to other than their fathers, those, they wouldn't make any interpretation. And the reason why they wouldn't interpret those hadiths is because they wanted the people to be scared and afraid. If a person thinks and fears that if they make ghiba, they will never go to Jannah, in most cases they're going to win. They're going to stay away from ghiba, they're going to be terrified. Versus a person saying, well, it really doesn't mean you're a kafir, it really doesn't mean you're not going to go to Jannah, it really doesn't mean that, but oh, okay, no problem. I just make ghiba and then make tawbah. I just make namima and then make tawbah. So there's wisdom in that. For argument's sake, someone did it, they're afraid of their skin, they're not Muslim, etc. Or they must be punished, etc., etc. So therefore, the general rule is that all of the faithful will be in Jannah eventually. When they go to Jannah, how they go to Jannah, what they have to go through before they're allowed entrance into Jannah. Whoever drinks alcohol, whoever wears this, whoever does this. Wallahu ta'ala alam. Inshallah, we have time for just 2 questions. Naam, akhi Ayyub.
What is the hukum on gossiping pertaining to if you have a therapist and you are talking about a specific situation that includes you and another person?
Understood. It goes back to the definition that we gave of gossip. Ala wajhil ifsad. The intention of making trouble and problems. This is what happened. I need help. Counselor, a therapist, a sheikh, a fatwa, versus you. So that, you just crazy what he said about it, right? But I don't believe it though, but that's what he said. You want me to talk to him for you? You want me to handle it for you? You sure? I know it ain't true, but I'm telling you what he said in front of everybody. That's stirring you up. Really? He said that about me? Whack at that. You turn clean hearts into dark hearts of the believers. That's not the same as you asking a question. It's not the same as you needing help or needing therapy. So there are haram things that a person is allowed as his husband. And rajulun stingy, and he doesn't give me enough money. The Prophet did say you can't call him stingy. That's ghiba. He says, take the money, that's enough for you and your son, even without him knowing it. So you're speaking to someone with that intention that doesn't fall under ghiba or namima. And of course, these are based off of intentions. Wallahu a'lam. This is unfortunately our last question tonight. Fadl akhi.
Knowing that there's a hadith that states that if anybody enters through the gates of hell, they will never get out. Knowing that, so when a Muslim does something, does that mean he's just going around the peripherals of?
I've never read that hadith before, that whenever a person enters hell, he'll never come out. I've never read or heard that hadith before. Rather, there are countless authentic hadiths that clearly state people will come out of the hellfire for Allah's forgiveness, or shafa'ah, or etc., etc. So they're talking about a believer won't be in the peripherals, but many believers, may Allah protect us from this, will actually burn in the fire. Why did they have a little bit left? And then by Allah's grace and His kindness and His mercy, they will be taken out for one reason or another. Their sins are done, someone interceded, someone begged the law, etc., etc. Wallahu ta'ala. Thank you very much, guys, for your time, your love, your attention, your respect. The whole crew, the whole squad, Mubarak, Mesa, you guys are amazing. May Allah bless you, make you even better. Alhamdulillah, I enjoyed my stay these few nights, these couple of nights out here in Minneapolis and Minnesota, Amir, Sheikh Ilyas, Mahmoudi for accompanying me. The whole crew, the whole squad, everybody, all of the beautiful brothers that I met. I ask Allah to bless each and every one of you, to keep you guys firm, to keep you guys strong, to keep you guys united, and to keep you far from the tricks and the traps of the shaytaan. And inshallah ta'ala, you young guys, young brothers, the young sisters that I can't see, I hope you guys inshallah ta'ala realize the sky's the limit. And you take it to the next level, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. May Allah bless you all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
That's it. It's that simple. Yeah, that's it. I like that name. It's that simple. It's that simple. One more. Fadl, akhi.
So how serious?